Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome everyone. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold, so my apologies for the voice, but this is just a video about me sorting cards. A lot of people ask me, how do you sort your cards? And so I thought I'd make a video about it, and I'll go over each of these piles that I'm making in just a bit. But keep in mind, this is, me sorting these cards with a dealer's mentality in mind. These are all cards I plan on selling, so, it's not like I'm recommending a collector sort their cards this way, but I guess they could. But yeah, this is how I sort cards like this that I plan on reselling. This you're looking at is sort of the accumulation of a number of deals, and this is round 2 of the sorting process for me. Round 1 involves basically getting rid of all the commons, or the cards that you can't sell, have no value, and putting them off to the side to be donated. I also separate the vintage from the modern. What you're looking at is just the modern. The vintage is somewhere else. And round 1 also involves pulling out all the most valuable cards that are going to be sent off for grading or sold individually on eBay or sent to a consignment company for auction or whatever is going to happen with those. And then what I'm left with is this sort of middle category, which is all these cards here. This is often where a lot of cards land, sort of cards that are worth 5 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, $2, maybe a couple more than that, but generally in that sort of ballpark where it's really hard to sell these individually. I don't really have the framework for it. You would sort of need to own a card store or set up at card shows, which I do occasionally, but not very often, and sell these in like quarter boxes, dollar box, $2 box type things. But since I don't do that much, I've had to find other ways to sell cards like this. And over the years, this is something I feel I've gotten very, very good at, and that is making lots for eBay out of cards like this, the 25 cent, the 50 cent, the dollar cards. Not just eBay, there's other consignment companies that will sell large lots, Huggins and Scott, for example, but eBay is definitely the main one, and that's for the most part what I'm doing here is I'm putting these cards into piles that I'm going to ultimately use to make lots for eBay. And let me just say, quick side note, this is a part of the process that I really enjoy. It's very kind of therapeutic for me sitting here sorting cards. Obviously, the video is sped up real fast here, but I would always have the radio on or a game on or a movie on, and I really enjoy that. I know a lot of people do not. I actually would guess most people do not. So I guess in that way, I'm sort of lucky that I enjoy this for whatever reason so much. But all right, what are these piles anyway? Well, here's the overhead shot of what we're just looking at. And these 3 piles down here, this is basically the worst stuff. This stuff is just going to go into a quarter box that I'm going to use at a show. And I don't set up at shows very often, like I mentioned. But I do once in a while, and do have like sort of a stockpile of quarter boxes sitting in the garage, and these will just go in there. They really don't belong in any of the lots that I'm going to be making on eBay. But here are the piles that are for eBay, and I'll just mention real quick down here at the bottom, because I know people will ask in the comments. These stickers are not actually for this sorting process. I use these stickers when I'm figuring out what I can pay for a collection, but yeah, you can ignore them for the purposes of this video here. The 4 piles on the left are cards I'm going to use to make player lots and retired players. There's about 10-ish or so players I set aside in each of baseball, football, and basketball. There's only 2 in hockey, but you can see Frank Thomas is on top of the baseball pile, Tom Brady's on top of the football pile, Michael Jordan's on top of the basketball pile, and Wayne Gretzky's on top of the hockey pile. And those will sort of go into a player box, and ultimately when I have enough of a player, I will then list them as a lot on eBay. And here's an example of a player lot I recently sold, 1,600 Nolan Ryan cards. Now, the player lots I make today are much larger in quantity than I used to. I mean, this is a pretty large lot, 1,600 cards. I used to make, player lots in the, couple hundred, and even when I first started, it was more like 50. And player lots generally do well because a lot of people collect by player. Makes sense, right? I mean, that's how I collected. I would have loved to buy player lot of Cal Ripken of basically any size. So that's a good way to sort your sort of, bulk star cards that don't have much individual value, but as a group can have some, hold some interest. Here's another example, 1,600 Dan Marino cards that I sold recently as a single lot. The next 3 piles, and it should be 4 piles, there was just no hockey cards at the moment, but same thing, players for player lots, except that these are active players. You can see on top of the baseball is Fernando Tatis, on top of the football is Justin Herbert, and on top of basketball is Luka Doncic. And the reason I separate retired from active players is because it takes a lot longer for me to accumulate enough cards of active players to make player lots out of them, just the way collections come into me for whatever that is. Like I'll much quicker get 1,000 Nolan Ryan cards than I would 1,000 Ronald Acuna cards. Probably just because a lot of collections up for sale include a lot of junk wax stuff. So a lot of the players, the retired players, have a lot of junk wax cards, and so it's sort of easier to accumulate enough to make a lot out of them. But the modern players do a lot better than the retired players just because there's more interest in them at the moment. and you need a lot fewer of active players to make a player lot because the per card that they sell for is a lot higher in general. Here's a large Shohei Ohtani lot that I recently sold, 393 cards, and actually priced this one way too low, I think, because it sold very, very shortly after me listing it. But the other thing I'll do with the active player cards is if I get to a point where there's just too many or there's a lot of them and I don't feel like breaking them up into smaller player lots, I'll just bulk them all out into one large lot like I did here. Here's 2,000 active baseball cards lot, stars only. Betts, Judge, Soto, and the description includes a lot more information about what players are included and rough counts and things like that. And just sort of a quick side note thought, back when I was like a pure collector, this is the kind of lot I would have just loved to buy. Like this, I would have looked at this and been like, this is going to provide me hours upon hours, if not days upon days of sorting fun. And so when I sell a lot like this today, I like to think that I'm selling it to a collector who is similar, collects similar to the way that I used to. The next 4 piles are similar category, except these are Hall of Famers who are not going to be made into player lots, or most likely not going to be made into player lots. On top of the baseball pile, you got Kirby Puckett. On top of the football, you got Marvin Harrison. On basketball, you got Tim Duncan. And on hockey, you got Mike Modano. And these players don't sell as well as the player lot players, but yeah, they might get made into player lots if I get a bunch in. Like if I bought a large collection and there was a bunch of Kirby Puckets in there, I'd just make it into a player lot. But usually, just make these into a Hall of Famer lot. Like here's an example of a recent listing I had: 2,500 baseball Hall of Famer cards, all in one lot, and similar type idea. These sort of lots generally don't do great. And when I say don't do great, I mean they don't sell real fast. It'll take a while before someone will hit the buy now or make an offer here. But these are really, really hard to sell cards, so this is one way to move a lot of them all at once. This next pile is sort of an afterthought pile, and they actually usually don't even have it, but it's just players who, same as the Hall of Fame category, just who are not in the Hall of Fame because of steroids, so I can't include them in like the all Hall of Famers lot. But I think it's Jose Canseco, Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, Mark McGuire, maybe 1 or 2 others, but the next 2 are inserts and parallels. The bottom is just all standard inserts and parallels from all sports across all years, and I'll ultimately use that to make a large insert parallel lot, 1,000 inserts, and depending on how many I have at any one time, I might split it up by sport or not, 1,000 mixed sport inserts or whatever. And the pile on top is same thing, but every card is serial numbered to 100 or less, and I like separating out those and just making one large lot out of all of those when I ultimately get enough in. Now, it might take like months before I have enough of these to make a lot, or sometimes it takes weeks depending on how much I'm buying at the moment. But here's an example of a 750 count lot where every card was serial numbered to 100 or less, and this is one I sold fairly recently. Next 2 piles are refractors on the bottom and prizm parallels on the top, and same sort of thing. At some point I'll have a ton of refractors and I'll just make a large lot, 1,000 refractors, or if I have a lot and I can split them up by sport, then it makes sense to do that. 1,000 baseball refractors or whatever. Same thing with the prizm parallels. 1,000 football prizm parallels, or 500 basketball prizm parallels, or 2,000 mixed sport prizm parallels, and all in one lot. And those those tend to do all right. The next category is autographs on the bottom there, and jerseys on the top. And these I have local buyers who pay strong for any common jerseys and any common autographs. So I actually usually sell these in person as opposed to somewhere online. Although every once in a while I'll have so many in that I'll need to make a lot for eBay. But yeah, usually I just sort of sell these off to somebody else local. This next pile is early 80s major stars. In early 80s, I mean 1980 to 1985. There's a Dan Marino second year on top there. And I use these, it depends sort of how they accumulate, but I might ultimately make player lots out of these because a lot of people like to collect their early 80s. It's sort of a cross section of where there's a lot of inventory, but it's also kind of vintage at this point. I mean, those are 40-year-old cards. So here's an example of a Ricky Henderson lot that I sold recently, a 425 count from the early 80s. This next pile is rookie cards, and only star rookie cards, not commons or semi-stars. But you can see Steve Nash on top there. For the most part, it's all Hall of Famers in this pile. There might be exceptions, but all Hall of Famers or key stars. And these can be used for a number of different things. Again, you can make player lots if I accumulate enough rookies of a single player, or I can just make sort of a bulk star rookie card lot from the 80s or the 90s. This can be used in various different ways, depending on how they accumulate. This pile here are cards going to COMC that I'm going to sell there. And, I should have caught cards going to COMC on round 1 of sorting, but, some slipped through the cracks, or on second opinion here, I found a few more. I think the card on top there is a Joey Votto insert numbered out of 99. And similarly, these are cards going to Greg Morris. Again, cards going to Greg Morris should have been caught in round 1 of sorting, but found another one in round 2 here. That's a Marcus Allen rookie 1983 tops. And this pile here is sort of other. It's like cards that don't belong in any of these categories, but are better than, you know, quarter card box for at the show. So it's like a 1977 Star Wars cards on top there. And what I do is I take all these other cards, put them into a big box labeled other, and when that box fills up, I go through it and decide what I'm going to do with them then. But that's it, just sort of an overview of how I do some of my bulk modern sorting. Hope everyone enjoyed. Let me know if anyone has any questions. Always happy to answer. And see you all again next time. Thanks, everyone.